I know, I'm such a cliche, but I had to look somewhat nice for this review. It's Bond. Now, Spectre picks up right where Skyfall left off, and Bond receives a message from his past, and which helps him to lead him to this criminal organization that has sinister plans. Now, going into Spectre, you guys, I was looking forward to this movie so much because Skyfall, depending on the day of the week, is actually my favorite Bond movie. And I can't deny the fact that these Craig Bond movies are honestly some of my favorite Bond movies ever. I just love what they've been doing with the Daniel Craig films, and I just have enjoyed them all, even Quantum of Solace to its fault. And walking out, I will say this much. It's not as good as Casino Royale and Skyfall, but you know what? I still loved this movie, and I will admit, I probably will love this movie a lot more than most people, you guys, because there's just a lot in this film that just satisfied me. Spectre, it definitely feels like a more traditional Bond movie than the previous Bond films. This definitely gets back to the more formula and rudiments that you saw in the previous sort of Connery and Roger Moore films than the previous Craig films. But in my opinion, I love that. And I could see an argument being said that it gets a little too cozy in the formula, that it doesn't spice it up much. But I love the formula, and in my opinion, this formula never felt like any sort of cliche. And if I had to say personally, my favorite thing about this movie is just Bond himself. I love Bond's mannerisms in this movie. I loved how he treated the women. I can't deny it. I loved the action sequences in this movie. And while, yes, the action sequences aren't as up to the previous films, they're still enjoyable, and I still had a fun time watching it. Now, something that did really surprise me in this movie was how much of a goodbye this movie felt. It definitely felt like this was going to be Daniel Craig's last Bond movie. It really did feel like it, and it felt like they were actually tying up Bond's character as a whole and Daniel Craig's Bond as a whole. So it honestly at times almost felt like I was watching the last Bond movie ever. Really enjoyed that aspect of the movie. Also, the Bond girl, Madeline Swan. I thought she was a fantastic character, and I loved her in this movie. Not only was she beautiful to look at, but she actually held her own. Also, Sam Mendes's direction in this movie is fantastic, you guys. The opening sequence was fantastic. I love the car chase scene, but my favorite one is every scene. Every single scene that is on this train is fantastic. Now, Spectre has its problems, and the fact that Spectre has its problems feels like a problem coming off of Skyfall, which was just no problems with that film. Overall, I will say the biggest problem I had is just the plot. It's just not as interesting and tight-knitted as Skyfall, which, in my opinion, comes as a shocker given what the plot of this movie goes as. You feel like this one should have hit a lot harder than it actually does. It's still interesting and kept me interested in it, but it's just not as interesting as the previous films. Also, same with the intensity of the movie. The tension and the thrills aren't as exciting as the previous films, but they're still there. Now, an issue that I feel like a lot of people are gonna have but for me, this was not an issue at all. That's Christoph Waltz. His villain is, for a lot of the times, kept in the shadows. You don't really see Christoph Waltz very much, and a lot of people are gonna feel very underwhelmed and feel like he wasn't utilized a lot. I never had an issue with it. I enjoyed having him in the shadows. Matter of fact, without spoiling much, for a good portion of the films, he's kept in the shadows deliberately, only revealing himself, creeping out of the shadows. And I thought that worked great. Only until towards the end half of the film where you see him fully, full-fledged and see where his character goes. I don't know. I really loved it. I was never disappointed. In the long run, Spectre doesn't quite live up to its predecessors, but still, in my humble opinion, is a fun, exciting, and beautifully gorgeous looking Bond movie that gets back to the basics and traditional standpoint that what makes Bond, Bond. As the score goes, I'm going to give Spectre a 4 out of 5. So you guys, have you seen Spectre? What did you think of the movie, you guys? Did you love it as much as I did, or were you a little bit disappointed in the film? Let's talk. And until next time, you guys, I'm the Slash Movie Reviewer, and you guys have just been Slash.